Wayne Munyon, and what I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Munyon family and the West family. There are a few of us still alive, so I wanted to document as much as I could so as you had some idea when you see the pictures and things, especially of the ancestors, that you get a little idea of what it's all about. When Wilma passed, we lost a little bit of history. What I'm going to do is try to cover the things that I know about her and her family to include them. I'll start with the Munyon side of the family. My mother was born, her name was Zelma. She was born in 1883, and she had two sisters. One was older, was Gladys, a couple of years older. The other was a twin. Her name was Elma. We spent a lot of time with Elma, who married Morrill Barnhart in Coldwater, Michigan. Coldwater was a small town in the southern part of Michigan, close to the Indiana line. Morrill had a small farm, and he was very good to us. We didn't have a car. We had a nice home, but we really didn't have much. And so Elma and Morrill would come on the weekends, take us out to the farm, and we would enjoy the time. I always remember that I was on the farm December 7th, 1941, when they bombed Pearl Harbor. It's a memory that I'll always have. Morrill and Elma had two children. One was Dale, and the other was Lucine. Dale had two children, and Lucine had two. Lucine was married to Arthur, who lived in Coldwater and had a small farm, but also worked nights in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the Kellogg cereal plant. Mom's father, and my namesake, was Arba Blind. My middle name is Arba. Arba was born in 1866 in Owego, New York. After I was born, he ended up living with Gladys in Three Rivers, Michigan. My dad, George Munyon, was born in 1886 in Batavia, Michigan, which is just a small town close to Coldwater. He had a brother, Alonzo, and a sister, Bessie, and another sister, Alice, and Zoe. Two girls and a boy. Alonzo lived in Battle Creek, Michigan. he also was very good to us. Alonzo worked for the power company in Battle Creek, which was really a good job back then. Zoe lived in a city close to Coldwater, and I say city, but it was Brunson, Michigan, which again was like 8,000 or 9,000 people. She had a son, and her son was very successful with a business of fishing reels. On my father's side, my daughter has gone back through history, and ironically, our family was part of the Sarah Proctor family in Massachusetts, who was part of the witchcraft trials. There's a museum now in Salem, Massachusetts, of the Proctor house.
They said I was wild, they said I was brave. Back then, I didn't know how time behaves.
Now I move slow, careful and kind. The hands of the clock have softened my mind. What once was muscle now gently shakes. Fear creeps in with each breath I take.
But I've lived a life, and I've paid my dues. Carry joy, carry grief, and all in truth. I love one woman.
Mom and Dad were married in November of 1920. I was born December 15th, 1933. It was a tough time. The country was just coming out of the Depression. My father had lost his job and was working for the WPA, which was an organization created by FDR to do projects around the city's infrastructure projects. After that, he worked for a woodworking plant who made exercise equipment, and then he worked for another company that made sleds. I grew up in a big house in Coldwater. I had one sister, Norma, who was 5 years older than I was. You'll see a picture of the house, and the upstairs had 2 bedrooms. I had one, Norma had one. Norma had a pretty tough life. She was born again during the Depression, and then as she got older in school, my mother got sick and she dropped out of school to take care of her and never went back to school. So she ended up getting her GED but didn't graduate from high school. I worked from the time I could pull my wagon. It was a small town. I would get corn cobs, which I could sell to the neighbors. They all had coal furnaces back then, and they used the corn cobs to start their fires. when I was in the 9th grade, I accumulated enough money to buy a bicycle, so I started to deliver newspapers. I did that until I started to work for a company, a small ice cream company, that I worked for until 1953, which was a very good opportunity because the people that ran the company pretty much let me do everything that I was capable to do. It was a wholesale company, so I got to hire and fire people and basically ran the company until 1953. I graduated, went to Coldwater High School and graduated in the middle of the class. There was 128 of us, and I was just kind of an average student. I played baseball, and actually I like to play baseball more than I like to study. But I got through school. In 1953, the Vietnam War was on, and my number came up to be drafted to go to the Army. I decided I didn't want to go to the Army, so I joined the Air Force and went to basic training. Again, I was pretty lucky. I got out of the basic training and then went to Denver, Colorado, where they told me I was gonna be a firefighter. Well, I didn't know what that meant, but I got on a plane, went to Denver, and found out that I was going to be trained on airborne radar for fire control. When I finished my training, I went to Waco, Texas, on James Connolly Air Force Base, where we didn't have fighters, but we had B-25s, which were the old World War II aircraft, where we mocked up the radar to train the radar operators that would fly in the jets. I stayed there for about 2 years, or maybe a year and a half, and then got transferred to James Connolly Air Force Base in Newfoundland, where we had F-89 fighters. I was there for 18 months. It was a pretty isolated place. Newfoundland at that time had fishing villages, but really no industry. But I had a good time, and it was a good experience. I was able to go to an Air Force rocket meet in Phoenix, Arizona. We were allowed to bring our aircraft into California to condition them because of the temperature. And so I spent a month in San Bernardino and then went on to Phoenix. It was a good experience. My airplane and my pilot was a colonel, and he was head of the Northeast Air Command. And he ended up in second place. After the Air Force, I got out in 1957. When I went home, my father was not in good shape. He was in an awful lot of pain. And afterwards, I always thought that he had a gallbladder problem, probably. But he died in 1957, right after I got home. What I had done when I left to go overseas, I had an old Chevrolet car. And that was my dad's first car. He had never had a car. Living in a small town, he could walk everywhere he wanted to go. And so he drove my car while I was while I was overseas. In 1957, after I got out of the Air Force, I went to school in Marquette, Michigan, under the GI Bill. It was one of those schools for electrical engineering that all started after the World War II that were for-profit schools. But we had the unique situation that in Milwaukee, we had a lot of professors from the University of Wisconsin. So I was interested in the technology, and so I had a good time going to school for the electrical things and the technical things, but we had some pretty tough professors who had retired from the University of Wisconsin for the English and all those kind of courses. I had to work. The GI Bill paid for my education, but I had to work to support myself, and I worked for a bottling company. We made squirt. At night, what I did was I went in, we unloaded the trucks, loaded them all back for the next day. Again, I was lucky. The gentleman that was running the place that hired me, he quit, and so I got to take over again the hiring and firing and the running of the night shift. It was a tough job. I would go in at about 5 o'clock at night after school, and then work until about 2 in the morning. So after about a year and a half, IBM came in and was interviewing people to work on a computer project. I interviewed, got the job, and then went to Kingston, New York. All of this time, my mother, Zelma, was living by herself in Michigan, in the original house, loved to garden, had lots of friends, was very active in the church. So when I went to school in Kingston, again I spent about 9 months learning a computer which we were going to take to Marquette, Michigan as part of the Air Defense Command. Back then the Cold War was on, and so IBM had the contract to put computers all across the country, the northern part of the country, to protect against Russia. While I was in Kingston, I met Bill Sybas, who was the husband of Wilma's sister.
This is an interesting chest.
Yeah, it's a jewelry box from China.
More furniture from China here.
That's Chinese chest. That's from Korea. That's a Korean chest.
That's a nice piece right there.
Wilma grew up in Andrews, North Carolina. Again, it was a small town. She lived outside of the town. It was in the Smoky Mountains, which was a beautiful area to grow up in. Wilma was born December 12th, 1935. So we were almost 2 years apart. She had a larger family. Her mother was Inez Nelson. She was born in 1903. Her father was Homer West. He was born around 1890. She knew more of her grandparents. Her grandfather was Henry Fidelity Nelson, and her grandmother was Rebecca Nelson. Her great-grandfather was George Washington West, born in 1868. Homer was in World War I. He fought in France, and unfortunately, that was back when they used mustard gas. And so he got mustard gas, which made him disabled, yet it really didn't affect his life that much. But Homer and Inez had a small home in Andrews, and there was 6 kids, 2 girls. One was Wilma and her sister Betty Sue, who went by Sue. The brothers were all older. All of them were born before Wilma. She was the youngest. Wilma's oldest brother was Quentin. He was born in 1921, and when World War II came around, he joined the Army early. He went to boot camp in eastern North Carolina, and there he died of pneumonia in 1941. Her brother Pate, who actually was called Orrin Dean was his real name, we called him Pate. He was born in 1923, and he served in World War II in the Philippines. Pate was a little different. He was known for having a still up in the mountains of North Carolina. The next one was Bob. Bob was born in 1926, and he served in World War II in a submarine in the U.S. Navy. I always remember I talked to him about that I was going to go to Tokyo. And he said the only way that he saw Tokyo was in a periscope in Tokyo Harbor. The next son was Mickey. Mickey was not in the war, but he served in the Air Force after the war and ended up in Da Nang in Vietnam. After that, he came home. He was a career soldier, but then he got out of the service and worked in Alabama as a civil servant. Bob got out of the service and married Edna Montague. They lived in Detroit, and Bob worked as a machinist for the auto industry. Later on, they divorced. He had one daughter, and then he came back to live in Andrews. Pate got out of the service and also lived in Andrews. Bob would work in Andrews, and he would go up north and worked a lot in tunnels, which was something that a lot of the people in the small town of Andrews, which didn't really have any industry, and so a lot of the people would go to work up in the north or out in the east, when a lot of the cities were digging tunnels for their water supply when they were near the coast. Wilma's sister was 2 years older than her. She was also born in December. Their house was pretty basic. To have that many people, 6 kids and the 2 adults, it was a pretty small house for them. They didn't have running water, had an outhouse, and it was a pretty basic house. Bob ended up, when he came back from Michigan, he lived at the house and did an awful lot of work on it to modernize it. Wilma's mother, Inez, was very frugal. She made all their clothes, made sure that they had everything that they needed. Unfortunately, she died a year before Wilma graduated from high school. Everyone else was gone. Sue has graduated from high school about the same time that her mother passed. She joined the Air Force and went to Seattle, Washington. There she met Bill Sybus, who was also in the Air Force. They stayed in the Air Force together until Sue got pregnant with her first child, and then that automatically got her out of the Air Force. So she came back to live in Andrews. All this time, Homer was living in Andrews. He didn't work much. The girls kind of took care of him. So when Sue left, Wilma had a household. She had to take care of Homer. Well, being the youngest of the family, her mother didn't really teach her how to cook and how to take care of the house. So in 1953, she had to learn real fast. So she took care of Homer, and then also she went to college for a year. She had a VA scholarship and went to Western North Carolina University for a year. After that, it was kind of tough. She was working in Atlanta. Then later, she went to visit Mickey, who at that time was in the Air Force, but living in Savannah, Georgia. There, she met a man, and they got married. She had a son, Mark, in in May 14th, 1955. Their marriage didn't last long, and she came back to Andrews and continued to work and take care of Homer and Mark. And then Sue came back when she had her first son, which was just about Mark's age. So they had the two kids. Wilma would work in Atlanta. She also worked in Andrews in a drive-in restaurant, which was one of her best friends. And that continued. And Bill, when his term finished in the Air Force, he came back also and lived in the house in Andrews. In 1958, Bill joined IBM. I didn't know him yet, but he joined in the same class that I was being trained at in Kingston. So both of us got to know each other in Kingston. Sue would come later to Kingston and live. She had two children now. She had Barry and Brian, and she lived in an apartment in Kingston when we went to school. We finished our training in Kingston in 1989, in April of 1989. We then went to Marquette, Michigan. We brought the computer, which was a pretty large computer. It was in a 5-story building. But we installed it in Marquette. I had an apartment in Marquette. Sue and Bill, with their two boys, came to Marquette and had an apartment also. Wilma would come from North Carolina to visit Sue and Bill and bring Mark. All three of the boys were pretty close in age. They got along real well. Wilma would work sometimes in Marquette. She worked for Montgomery Ward's, which doesn't exist anymore. Marquette was a very cold place. It was the northern part of Michigan, right next to Canada, right on Lake Superior. It's a beautiful place, but it was cold. So Wilma would go back and forth to Andrews and Marquette.